Good morning, time to roll. Just rubbed on some frankincense. That's my medicine these days, plus food. So, I've been really anxious about this one because it's ethics and I can get a little bit intense about it and I can get extremely passionate about it. I'm going to try and keep it at discussion level rather than getting into the trap of potentially coming across a little fierce, which I can do. I've got a cup of coffee this morning, not wine. And it's a bit cold, but anyway. Now, first things first, I want to just say today's session may not really be for kids. So I'd prefer you to be over 18 to watch this one because we are talking about the Witchcraft a little bit. So, yeah, I'd just rather you not watch it yet. So when you turn 18, absolutely. So parents, if you're listening to this, I know last week someone was watching my video and when I dropped the F-bomb and their little girl was in the room. So I apologize for that. I am a swearer. So today we're going to talk about ethics. Look, because of the time limit and how bad my data is, I will be skimming over things. I'm not here to teach you about the smaller beginning stuff of witchcraft because you can do that on your own and there's heaps of stuff out there. This is more how I see things before I teach any spells. So I want to stay away. Well, first things first, let's talk about agendas. Everyone has an agenda, be it good or bad, whatever their intention is. My intention today is to awaken you into the concepts of how spells work and should we do them and why do we do them. A little bit of history, a little bit of conversation about good and evil, and also know that whatever I do say today, I am representing myself. I'm not representing the witch culture or witch societies or other witches. I am representing my belief system and my thoughts on it. So it is in no correlation to anybody else. Simply, if I was going to be teaching you this is kind of the stuff I'd like to talk about. So let's get started. Actually, I wanted to just do a quick random on the side of that. So yesterday, actually a couple of days ago, I had looked up corona because I'm a word person and I like to decode words. And I thought, I wonder what corona means other than the beer. And it basically was kind of, it says that it's a gas that's around the sun and also around some stars. And also can be named for the crown around your head. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. You know, like the sun, and we need sun because that helps us. And I always see with the sun, Jesus Christ, I always see him more of the return of the sunlight rather than an actual person. So that's just how I see it. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. My mate sends me a message yesterday going, isn't it interesting? You know, because he'd also got another look at it, but he went coronavirus or number 19, and he said number 19 in the tarot pack is the sun. And I thought, oh wow, actually that's really interesting. And then I thought, well, if we're in an energy space of the sun, where will our next movement be? And of course that goes to the next one at 20, which is judgment. It looks a bit scary, judgment, doesn't it? Ooh, hello little people down there. It's actually like the next beginning. So if you know a little bit about the tarot major arcana, it is a journey from the full to the world, and it's learning things as you go. So when you get to this card, it's kind of like you've had your journey, you've looked at it, you've learnt, you've had some horrors, you've lost everything, you've regained everything, and you're pretty much ready to go on to the next step, which is the world, which is the last major card. So this is the one where we sit and we think about what are we taking to the future and what are we dumping. So there's a real wisdom and maturity about this card. It is a higher energy card. You need to step up into the next frequency. So hopefully this is, you know, the reason for Corona, because humans do like to have reasons and lessons for everything because it makes us feel like we're empowered and it's meant to be. So maybe, you know, hopefully number 20 kicks in next and we have a reason for all this chaos at the moment. Now, where to start? Why should we talk about ethics before I teach you witchcraft? Because I'm basically handing you a tool, and I'm handing you a tool that changes energy, and depending on the person doing it, you can send out malice or you can send out, you know, potential, or you're in control of what you're sending out. So I'm not going to be giving you information unless I think you're wise. I think that you have done your practice, because witchcraft is a practice. You need to practice it. It makes me laugh when people do one spell for the first time in their entire life and it doesn't work. And they're like, well, it's bullshit, this spell work. Well, it's kind of like turning up to university on the first day to become a doctor and you're pissed off at the end of the day because you don't know how to do some major surgery. It's like, well, you've got to learn. This is why there is a maiden, a witch, and a crone. Now, just because, and it's really just a philosophy that it's not always necessarily that when you get to a certain age, you're a crone. Sometimes I feel like I'm a crone now, and I certainly have days where I look like I'm much older than what I am. But then on other frequencies, you know, I've met amazing young 20-year-olds who are so switched on, and they're the essence of crone. So don't get stuck in, it's an age group thing. It's more about women having many faces. If you ever study Hecate, who's, you know, she's very much a goddess of witchcraft, you know, you will learn about the phases of that, and the moon phases, and this side and this side and this side. It's becoming acceptance of all this knowledge around the sides of you. So, and so really what I'm trying to do is setting you up before I give you a tool that you could use. I have learnt in the past giving someone a little bit of information can cause a lot of damage, and I refuse to get stuck in that ever again. So I'm just having quick. Now, I do sit on the side of a witch. We called chaos witches, which means that we don't mind a bit of conflict and a bit of frequency and a bit of development, because we're kind of futuristic. We do like to play with the facts. So just, I could be, actually I wanted to do a quote for you and I have to find it. My notes are such a mess. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by that. So, because I talked about the jinn in the last video. So the jinn is in the Quran. It's a story about creatures that were created by Allah before humans. They were naughty, they carried on a bit. So Allah, you know, did the whole stop it, behave, and then he made humans. Now, in the Quran it says, well, it proclaims that anything that clairvoyants do or any occultists do, anything that is spirits, false prophets, is the jinn, because they believe that when humans die, they go directly to Allah, right? So for them, there's no in between. Any weird supernatural stuff is caused by the jinn. On the flip side, you know, you've got the Bible that says, and I'll actually just read the quote from Matthew, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. So I'm kind of taking the mickey out of myself that I could myself be a false prophet. So I am, of course, not coming from a place of trying to be false, but the conscious mind is really amazing. So I may be delusional to my own self. So I want you to question everything I say today, because I am very much not an anarchist or into anarchy, because I feel like that actually just kind of annoys me, that you're either a doctrine and dogma or you're an anarchist. You know, there's no space for questioning anything, and I'm in the space of questioning everything. And I think that's a healthy space to be. I always do question education, you know, because, you know, we take these little kids and they're little sponges at that age. And I remember being really pissed off in university when I suddenly was getting information that was contrary to everything I'd ever been taught at school. So primary school, high school level, suddenly at university level, they were like, oh, well, we think we're going to give you this information now. And it was like, well, you should have gave that to me when I was at primary school, when I was a little sponge, because I believed everything I was being told, you know, like, and everything is subjective. You know, we think we're told everything's objective, but I really think everything is subjective. So, and at least at university level, they're actually honest about it. You know, they'll say, well, the first couple of years at uni, you know shit. You don't know anything. We're going to teach you about things that people who know stuff know. And then we're going, and even in that is a form of social control. You know, like, you have no brain yet until you've heard what people with brains say, and therefore at the end of university then we're going to ask you what your opinion is, because we think that should have the wisdom now to be able to have freedom of thought and freedom in will. So it is a really interesting thing. So I take witchcraft really, really seriously. To me, it's not, I mean, Aleister Crowley apparently put the K at the end of magick, because he wanted to make sure that people knew the difference between magic, M-A-G-I-C, which was kiddies' entertainment, to magic, M-A-G-I-C-K, which is the grown-up, powerful stuff. So no matter what you think about Aleister Crowley, I always say, if I was ever going to get into necromancy, which is bringing back the dead, I'd always bring back Aleister Crowley, because one, I'd love to slap him in the face for every arsehole thing he ever did to women. And then I'd love to sit down and ask him all the information that he accumulated while he was here. Because, you know, and that comes back down now to that space of good and evil. You know, if we get stuck in the space of good and evil, we're missing vital information that's important. Aleister Crowley is known as the modern occultist, and I think the most evil man in the world, right? The most evil man. He tops Hitler. The most evil man in the world, because he was an occultist and he played with the supernatural. He pushed boundaries. He come from a fundamentally Christian background, and just pursued it his entire life. And one thing I hate about Crowley is that he would manipulate and control people for his own agenda. And that is what I don't want people to do. But if you do decide later on in your craft culture that you don't have problems with doing certain spells towards other people, you need to take responsibility for that. And we can talk about karmic law. We can talk about what goes around comes around. We can talk about the law of three, you know, that what you send out comes back to you 3 times. I had this man once say to me about karma, that it only comes true if you believe it. Interesting, because he never seemed to get any of his karma. Let me tell you that. And that you know, because we do feel safety in karma. Oh, well, you know, if you're an arsehole, then I'm allowed to send you back some arsehole, you know, because I'm going to teach you a lesson, and it's all about balance, you know, good and evil, you know, it sits in that space. So before ever doing anything, you need to know what your own moral conduct is. So I better get back to, unfortunately today's a little bit like school, you know, with all these little notes and what's this and what's that, and especially when my notes are shocking. Where I am. Sorry, I'm gonna just having one of those days where you think, well, did I actually write that somewhere? On the page I didn't have it. So what are ethics? I've just grabbed this off the internet. A moral principle that governs a person's behaviour or conducting of an activity, or a branch of knowledge that deals with moral principles. It's not law. ethics are not law. Everyone has their own ethics though, and we do like to keep a moral compass most of the time, because most people feel safe when they have predictability in their life. We don't like things that we can't predict, because then it makes us feel anxious. So like in relation to the red room, I have my own moral conduct and my own moral compass. I do not, because I'm an energy worker, I don't say, you know, spirit tells me to tell you. I don't go from that. I sit very quietly and I channel into, like, almost like make a Wi-Fi connection to the client, and then I let the client tell me what it is we need to talk about that day. Because I have a real problem with third-party information, and I have a real problem with hierarchy. And that is something I tell all my clients before we start the session. I am popping into you because I think you are the most empowered and knowledgeable person in your life. So therefore, I'm just relaying what you need to know, right? So we're taking, because you can be a real, well, you know what? Spirit says you're behaving badly. Well, spirit can piss off. Like, you know, never take empowerment away from someone. That's really my moral compass. I don't like feeling vulnerable. I don't like it when people take my empowerment away. This is why betrayal hurts people so much. You know, like in relation to affairs, is it really the fact that they've gone off and had sexual relations or emotional relations with someone else? It's really the betrayal and the unstabling of your life and everything that you knew before and after, and the way that it impacts your ego and your pride. And, you know, like, it's just a wave of destruction, because it's like an earthquake. So, you know, so when people come to me, I tell them everything I know, and I'm very, very open during the session, because I want the person to leave more enlightened than when they arrived. And they have the ability to do that. Same as a healer. A healer's job doesn't, oh, I can heal you because I'm a healer. No. The healer awakens the knowledge that you already know within yourself, right? You're healing yourself. You really just having someone go, remember when you used to know some stuff? You know, we're really just a conduit. And people can get quite vicious towards me, you know, like, oh, well, you're a liar, or you spend an hour and a half just telling people bullshit. My daughter's fabulous. She says, everybody has their own belief systems, right? That's how she answers it. I'm not even sure she even really believes what I do either. But I always question someone when they're so violently aggressive towards you, because there's something in themselves that is unrattled, or it's rattled. It's a little bit like looking at art projection. You know, some people can be so terribly upset by artwork that they want it down. They want the book to be off the shelves. Just get it down, because I can't, my base chakra, my belief system, it just can't handle it. Get it down. So I'm gonna ruin it for everybody, right? Is it the artist's fault, or is it the viewer? Do you know, you've got to keep asking these questions. So getting back to good and evil, because I said in the last session about are you a good witch or are you a bad witch? Well, that depends, doesn't it? I call that's an easy way to get out of stuff, right? Because really what the person's asking is, Joe, with the information and knowledge that you have, are you a good person? Are you doing the best with that? Now, I think the question should be, are you an asshole, right? Are you an asshole? So because it's not about good and evil, it's about, are you an asshole? Are you going to take someone else's free will from that person? And also the person probably doesn't know anything about witchcraft. I remember in my 20s, I used to get so defensive about witchcraft. I had to, especially if I came across someone who was a very dogma Christian, you know, like, they, you know, like, no, and I would get so righteous about it. And it's because somewhere deep in my own psyche, I was a little hesitant, actually. It's because people, particularly now, I'm very, very calm in my belief systems, and I've got to a space where I'm not really emotionally triggered by information. So I don't need to be defensive about it. So, you know, I have Buddhist friends, I have Hindu friends, I have Jewish friends, I have Christian friends, I have Catholic friends, I have atheist friends, I have witchcraft friends. And basically all our compass is that we have, we're accepting of other people's belief systems. That's it, just accepting of. So, so one question is, when you are doing spells, you know, and I won't go too much into spell work at all, but let's talk about hexes. Hexes is sending out malice towards a situation or something else. And this is going to rely on the practitioner, the witchcraft person. You know, you can, if you look at energy, say as a binding spell, if you have got a situation where someone is, say, stalking you, trying to ruin your life, you know, stuff like that, you may absolutely feel justified in sending a hex their way, because these people are penetrating your free will and they have little respect for your life. So you can say, well, you know what, if anyone is deserving of that, then I'm going to... Now, what I would suggest is maybe you think about disconnecting the energy towards that. So the first thing I'd probably suggest is a binding spell, which is really just saying my energies are not with your energies, you know. So I bind you not to be in my energy space. And you're not sending malice, you're just making a very clear boundary cut. Took. You know, some people pop people or situations in the fridge and they freeze it. And actually, you would be astounded by how successful people are with that. Popping people in the freezer, it's hilarious. So please start to think about what your moral compass is, because I don't want to teach you how to do spells if you really just want to get back at that boyfriend 3 years ago, because that's bullshit. You know, like, what you're best doing is to refocus. And this is why we're going to do an energy lesson before I teach you spell work, because where you focus is where you go. So if you're focusing on revenge, then that's a lot of time of your day and a lot of energy you're wasting, because you could be formulating an amazing future that way instead of looking that way. So that's why we're going to do energy work first. Now, I'm just going to quickly scan over some stuff here because I've got many... And also, like, magic's been around forever. Well, I should say ever. We've got a lot of evidence way back that it's been used forever in Mesopotamian time. And magic, you know, goes from one thing to another. Start small with your spells. Don't expect too much. Don't go, I might go study Egyptian magic, because even now, after, you know, 20 years of me practicing magic, Egyptian is intense. It's really intense. So I recommend that you don't go looking in that direction just yet. So one thing I do want you to know is that magic and spells are real to me. And if they're real to you, then you will manifest them successfully. Because there is infinite realities in my world. And for example, too, if you can imagine it, then you can create it. So just getting back to my little science crush, Nikola Tesla, you know, he did amazing work. Croatian, you know, runs over to America, does these amazing things, and then dies a pauper. One of the things Nikola Tesla, he imagined things and then he spent his time creating them. It wasn't the other way around. He didn't accidentally fall on top of things. You know, he accidentally decided, you know, move across there, Edison, you're in the way. One of the things that he got ridiculed for, and he died ridiculed for it, was Wi-Fi. So 100 years later, you know, so don't underestimate the power of imagination and what we can create. That's one thing I really want to hone in on when we do energy work, because if it's the manifestation, it's the intention and the moving your energy into a direction. That is spell work that way. So thank you, Tesla. You know, actually, Tesla, being a scientist, there's a story that goes that he he woke in the night to his mother, who was in Croatia, and that night she died. And that got him that losing his mother and her coming to him in his sleep or in front of him. I'm not sure how the story goes, but he was so sure that her energy had traveled to him and left him a message before she died, or as she died. And it changed his philosophy, and you should really study Tesla. He was an amazing mind. And unfortunately, those amazing minds come through not so often. So I really get excited about what might the future be, what magic might look like. Because, you know, electricity, magic is energy and makes electricity. You know, turning a light bulb on is magic. You know, and getting back to good and bad, when people go, are you good or bad? People are cursing all day. People are hexing all the time. You know, I hope he gets what he deserves. Oh, get out of my way. You know, like if you drive in the car, you're constantly sending out negativity and cursing to people. People are always, you know, you're doing it all the time. So, I mean, we shouldn't be getting stuck in am I a good person or a bad person? We are people, therefore we manifest both sides of that. No one can be good all the time. And what is good, it changes with history. It changes with philosophies. It changes with now. In the future, you know, like I have had 2 children out of wedlock. Neither one has a religion. I have free speech. I'm saying things here right now. Take me back to Kramer time. Take me back to Spain, or take me back to the burning of the witches. Even the 17th century women weren't allowed to have a conversation. I mean, you should study Wollstonecraft, Mary Wollstonecraft. She just, you know, she's one of the first kind of well-known feminist writers, and she was just asking for women to be educated. She wasn't saying anything other than that. She was like, well, we can do more than just play piano. Like, you know, I mean, and I can't even play piano. So, good, and it changes all the time. It's fluid, do you know? And you've got to question. Well, actually, just the ability of questioning was evil once. It was a heathen to actually ask. Or if I have a different opinion, I mean, you can look and go and study the Russian Revolution. Do you know, like, the most beautiful philosophers, Russian philosophers, were talking about equality. And they were talking about what if the world looked like this? And it was coming from quite a romantic space. And then it led, you know, to the downfall of the Tsar, and then it led to Stalin, and then, you know, and then you've got the Soviet Union, and people were frightened to speak. You know, you had the secret services, and it became terrifying, you know. So beautiful things can end up in terrible places. And terrible places can end up in beautiful things. I mean, if it wasn't for Crowley, you know, who questioned independence, and he questioned independent thought. And he kind of went, well, what about this and this and this? And it was that kind of like a wave of new information that potentially led to the hippie revolution in the 60s, because it was all free love and sexual, you know, experimentation and ideas of relieving some of the chains, do you know, and then that led to New Age. And then New Age was really a necessary space, but it was also still trapped, I think, in the ideology that witchcraft is still stuck in, which is good or bad, which comes from, you know, this fear-based thinking way back that what are witches, and we don't like it. Firstly, they're challenging us, and we don't like that. And they know stuff about herbs, and, you know, and they have a frequency with the universe that's astounding. You know, like, this is freaky. They're doing things that only we say God can do, you know, and therefore it frightens people. You know, instead of going, well, tell me about it. Tell me about it. I remember one of my university lecturers said to me once, the most dangerous thing we can do is to quieten a man. The most dangerous thing we can do is quieten a man. I mean, he meant and women, but so, you know, and getting back to New Age, I think New Age is fantastic for health. Like, I really love New Age stuff. Is high frequency and keeping your body fresh, and, you know, especially because I'm very, very, like, when I teach witchcraft, I do like you to be a healthy person. I would need you to eat magic, which is like, you can either be putting E10 into your body or you can be putting in premium. And the magic that's accumulating in your body is dependent on what you feed it. And you all know I love a glass of wine, but my week is, you know, so well thought out as far as food presentation is. I eat magic. So you can either have, you know, like takeout food potentially could have zero magic in it because there's no health benefits to it, where organic, out of your garden, fresh food would have 100% magic in it. So, you know, if you start to think of food as magic, or energy, you know, you're popping the right stuff in, therefore you have a lot of energy out. So, you know, the New Age stuff, it was still stuck in, I think, in that little box that we need to be liked. I need to be liked because, and I think being liked is probably an evil concept, really, because to be liked, then you have to almost submit to popular opinion about stuff. We don't like it when someone says something we don't want to hear, right? And we hate them, but maybe their value is way higher than the person who's liked. So, you know, kids, particularly today, like social media, these little like buttons, we feed off it. And we will change our way we talk on it to get the likes. Like, we are so controlled right now by a little button. And, you know, 1984, if you read that book, I mean, he was, you know, just years in front. He, you know, so Big Brother is watching. You know, we are so controlled. I mean, I know people that have never got on social media because they can see the control before it even started. It's, you know, in some ways it's good and evil. Right now we wouldn't be without it because, you know, it's a connection to the outer world while we're stuck in an inner world. But maybe quietening the outer world would open up our inner world. So once again, getting back to that, what is good, what is bad, it's same as when we talk about shadow self. Shadow self is, you know, it's the evil side of us. No, it's not. It's the side of us. I actually call it your best friend. And most of us are not taught it, and we sit in the like space. I need to be liked because, you know, and being liked has its benefits. People will share your videos. People will laugh at you. People will do this because they like you. If they don't like you, you get cut off to a lot of energy. So I've just forgotten what I was just talking about. Okay, seriously, I've just forgotten what I was talking about. Being all liked, I get on a tangent. When I just have to think for a second. So you have to, it will come back to me for sure, but I'm going to go back to New Age stuff. So, and I wanted to have a little, actually, New Age really did have a lot of work to do, because if you go back to Anton LaVey, which is, you know, he created the Church of Satan, and I'm going to grab my yellow book for this because I just wanted to tell you a bit about LaVey. So LaVey was, well, I'll just miss most, you don't need to know all his background, but he used to be a musician, and he would see the town folk come out on a Saturday night, say, and play up really badly, really, really badly, and be all the sins, you know. And then the next day they'd rock up to church and repent. And he called bullshit on this, and it really was a driving force for him to learn about human nature. So when we have laws and things, you know, laws are to keep functionality and keep us all safe, and they have many, many benefits to that. But even like with education and stuff, we're always, it's kind of like taking the medium idea of everything and getting rid of the external sides, you know, because that's where there's a little danger on the external sides, the extremists, you know, on that side. We like to keep into the medium. So that's where our laws come from, or our belief systems, you know, we all sit in a medium. And he kind of stepped back out of that and went, oh, I'm going to have a look. And probably a psychologist really at heart, because he did see human nature and studied human nature. And he gets a really bad rep, Anton. And unfortunately, it was kind of the same time that serial killers were coming in to known spaces in the psyche, and then of course the Satanist, and then, you know, the pentagram and the pentacle gets turned upside down and it becomes a sign of Satan, and it's all not right. It's all hysteria. So, you know, the New Age, when it came back in, you know, like, oh, we want to talk about supernatural stuff and white lighting and bring a bit of God back, and it had a lot of work to fix, and I thank it for that. But then what happened is we became, like, for me to come back out and witches to start coming back out, it gave us a platform as well, because, you know, I get to have this discussion on YouTube right now. So, and LaVey, you know, please have a look at that. I'm going to read you kind of what LaVey taught in essence. So he believed that you only gave kindness to those who deserved it. He quite liked indulgence. You know, LaVey, it wasn't that he believed in Satan. He didn't. He just challenged the doctrines. And the doctrines are when this is law. This is how it is. It's not fluid, it's fixed. And you behave. Right? So he challenged those ideas. So indulgence, you know, he said we are physical creatures as much as we are spiritual creatures. So sex is not a sin. It's probably the most massive controlled bullshit he'd ever called it on, actually. He said because we are skin. Do you know, and I sometimes ask myself why you would want to be reincarnated when there's so much suffering and pain in the world. And, you know, the other side might be quite dandy. And, you know, maybe it's because we get to sleep and we get to have sex and we get to have food and taste. You know, it's the tactile things of human beings. We, particularly right now, we're becoming very acutely aware of what counts. Family, hugging, touching, food, people, being social. These are animal instincts. And he was saying we need to not forget that we are animals. And we need stuff, like, you know, and we shouldn't feel guilty for it, right? So now it doesn't sound so scary now, does he? It doesn't sound scary at all. And he was kind of like, you need to live right now. We don't need to worry about what happens when we die. Because, and that's kind of like modern day mindfulness. You know, like, let's live for today. You know, we'll worry about tomorrow. And he also said responsibility to the responsible. So he basically said, you know, not everybody is wise. So we shouldn't just be handballing responsibility to everyone. There should probably be the smarter people of the universe that we should be delegating some information to. And unfortunately, quite often that comes, we think the most responsible people are probably the higher up in the pay packet potentially, or that they have, as we know, we can study sociology and you can see what I'm referring to with that. He also believed in an eye for an eye, and I think that's in the Bible. Hello, like. So when you're thinking about hexing, you know, is an eye for an eye? Are you balancing the playing field by sending back the same, like, well, you punched me, so I'm going to punch you. Right. But then you can sit back and if you're an energy reader like me, you think, well, is it worth the punch? Because every reaction has a reaction, and, you know, where do you want that to go? Like, how much energy you could look at the person that just punched you and you have just as much power to walk away from the situation. He did believe in nonconformists and individuality. And we kind of get that. And he praised ego, and he praised pride, and desire. One thing, desire is an interesting thing because it gets stuck in we think desire is a sexual desire, or my desire to, like, we always put it into a kind of negative connotation, where desire, one of my desires right now is, I'd love to throw a big party. Like, I'm missing people so much. Like, I think about, I'm going to have 100 people at my party. Like, and that's my desire right now. It's so rich and colourful. And I'm like, I just want to have all these people just dancing and getting their shoes off and touching each other, you know. I always laugh at people that really hate any kind of, my belief is with sexual stuff and everything else, if everyone is aware and knowledgeable and in agreement, then mind your own business, right? You know, I saw something the other day where people were just horrified by these carry-ons of nudity, right? And all I could see is that they were having a jolly good time, you know, so I don't want to go join them, but I certainly didn't want to stop them. Like, so it makes me laugh when people are so upset about stuff like, and he believed hate and aggression was a vital component of survival. This is a big deal, particularly with bullying at school. You know, because be nice, be nice. Be nice. Be the higher person. So much pressure on people to be nice. Well, being nice can almost kill off your shadow self, because remember, your shadow self is the other part of you that we keep it kind of hidden. It's the real us. It's the truer us. It's the stuff that it goes on here. I mean, I love it when I see people at work and then, you know, yes, I understand that. Absolutely. Yes, I'll do everything in my power to fix this situation. Fuckhead, right? Both. That's both happening right there, right? And somewhere in the middle we need to meet. So, my thing is, get to know your shadow self. Go and study your shadow self. It's your best friend. So if you're like getting terribly bullied at school, and you want to lash out, and you want to say, you don't have the right to treat me like this, but you don't, because you want to be liked, and you're probably frightened, and you head off home and you simmer in it. And simmer, because that person's taking your empowerment away, right? Simmer, and then you go and you lash out and you do something so extreme that had you dealt with the situation beforehand, it would have been here, and now it's here. So we really do need to work on speaking our truth, because if I don't like how you're speaking to me right now, I don't like this. These are my boundaries, right? So we're not teaching people this enough. We're teaching people to be liked. And that was something that LaVey really couldn't stand. He couldn't stand white witches. He was very adamant about it. He was kind of like, well, piss off. You're a witch. And you can do this and you can do that, because that's what witchcraft's about. So, you know, he was very... So getting back to the aggression side, one of the things I see in Red Room a lot is that by the time we get to depression, there was anger. And we weren't allowed to be angry, because anger is a negative aspect, apparently. You know, anger is just as much important as love is in my eyes. But how we deal with anger is the difference. If you go and lash out with anger, that is not cool. But if you sit in your anger and you realize you're angry and that you have a right to be angry, and then you process it. So, you know, like I was angry a couple of months ago, really angry, almost like just dreaming up revenge stuff. And I thought, well, this is tormenting my energies. I can't. And I went off and I did some healing activities which brought it all up and out. So instead of doing revenge, I worked on myself, right? So study LaVey, have a look at what he's talked about, because he's saying, and I mean, it gets bagged out. I mean, is LaVey a good guy or a bad guy? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is that he got you to think about some stuff. And thinking about stuff then helps you to think about what your moral compass is and your ethics. And when you move forwards in witchcraft, if you choose to, or any part of your life, you're going to have a clear idea of how you're going to react in certain situations. Talking about aggression, I'm going to talk about a real story of my own. I was terribly bullied. I think it's from grade 10 to grade 12. And, you know, she was quite good at what she did psychologically. You know, if just when I thought I was starting to relax, she'd phone me. And we didn't have ID, like phone caller ID back then. She, you know, and just say, if you're going to go to this party, I'm going to kill you there, right? So, and this went on, but I wanted to refer back to, I think it was grade 10, and I was walking out of school, and she'd come with me with another woman. Well, they were teenagers. Another person came, and she was frightening. So I was presented with two very fierce people, and I didn't know what to do. They came, actually, I think that one of them had a bat. Like, they really hated, and they wanted to make sure, and I thought I'm going to get my head smashed in. Not 1 second did I think, I'm going to step up to that person. So that is why I have trained myself to step up, and step up in a wise space, not in an aggressive space. So, because you need to unravel the pattern, you see, like that they've got it. Most bullies have a plan of how you're going to react. So sometimes if you don't react that way, then they go, oh, I'm feeling insecure now, and I'm going to back out. So, you know, so I was terribly frightened. I thought I was going to get bashed to death, to be honest. And from the side came this woman, out of, like, a girl that I went to school with, out of nowhere, came across this, and she came in with full force. And she'd seen what was happening. She could see that I was incapable of dealing with that situation, that I was the vulnerable party, and there were these aggressors, and she came in with equal aggression and topped it. And she came in, and that unstabled them. And she didn't have anything. I think she had a school bag. And they had two people and a bat. And it was enough to make them go away. That moment changed my life, because I realised that I didn't have to be aggressive. I had to equal the energy. So I remember a few years later, I was out at a nightclub, and some woman went, "You love yourself?" And I went, "Yes, I do." All right? Unstabled them. So my shadow self has come into play. Now, I'm just having a quick look again at my things, because we're at 46, and I know how long it takes to upload this. And there's going to be so much stuff that I look back here. Oh, actually, I had just written this in my book, actually. When people say to me about good and evil, and I say, because one of those things, I remember I had door knockers come, and they presented utopia to me. And it was, we were all walking with the beasts, and we were all lounging, and everything was lovely, right? And it goes, "Wouldn't you like to live in that world?" And I was like, no. Because we need to have something to look forward to, don't we? Like, we need something to be moving towards constantly. And lounging around day after day with a lion, or it'd be great for a little bit. But I was like, is there vineyards? Like, am I going to have some wine? Like, you know, his utopia was probably the most frightening thing to me ever. Like, so when people say to me about we could have this beautiful life, it's like, well, everyone's life is different. You know, there's ideas that the afterlife for a lot of people is their own heaven. You create your own space, and you live in, you know, your utopia. I mean, my utopia would be wine. And maybe Manu Bennett, like, sorry. But I wrote in my book, you know, that when people say, well, if you must do black magic, you know, I teach black magic, I study black magic, but I don't do black magic. But even with that, some people will see that as evil because I'm looking at it, but that's it, you know. But are you equated with the devil because I can sit and dine with both, right? So this is kind of when people say, oh, you know, I'm very much, you know, when I've got people, Jehovah Witnesses, when they come to the door, I'm always quite pleasant because I love a good chat. But when I start to tell them how I feel, they don't want to hear it. And I find that so disrespectful. You come to my door. You know, people that are listening to this have probably tuned out because it's not their cup of tea. You might be still listening to it because it is your cup of tea. But the fact that you even found me means that you're probably on the same wavelength already. So my thing is kind of, you know, be brave to have the discussions. Be brave to sit back and say, well, I don't like what I'm hearing, but I'm going to think about the process for that, you know, because we can never ever really see where people have got to, like how they got to their path or their situation. We can go and sit in their path, but you haven't walked the path. So you need to, like, everyone's idea, and you can see it with language all the time, you know. I've been thanked that I explained things simply. I don't need to use big words, you know, to make myself look smart. I'd rather just people understand the energy and the intention around stuff that I'm talking about. So I'm just going to pop that over there. And also, like, with respect to, you know, out of asking good and evil, are you a good or evil witch? Why aren't we asking that of scientists? I mean, if you want to have a look at what Nazi Germany were doing at the time with their scientists, you would be pretty horrifically upset about that. What they were doing was evil, without a doubt. But what science led to after that was a huge amount of step up. Unfortunately, you know, people had to suffer horrendously for that. So why are you a good politician or a bad politician? You know, why is it witches get it? We get it because somewhere back in the day someone said we were evil, and we've been fighting for acceptance ever since. So try and not get stuck in that space about good and evil. Actually, my dad, one of his worst quotes is, don't trust anyone else because you can't trust yourself. Is that the most pessimistic quote you've ever heard? But it is a good idea to have a look at yourself, because when you are doing witchcraft and spell work, you need to know yourself more. That's the very first kind of thing you need to know about being a witch, or know yourself so that you can craft better. And that's life generally. Know yourself. And that means you have to properly look at yourself. It's not about self-hatred. That's bullshit. People get stuck into self-hatred when they look at their negative aspects. Don't do that. Just try and get on a plane level field with that and just see it like some of my bad traits. Oh, gosh. Oh, can be bad-tempered. I'm reactive. I'm a bad cook. Like, you know, and you know, some people are surprised I'm a mum because they go, oh, she doesn't fit mum. I certainly didn't fit mum when we went to mother groups and stuff like that, because honestly, my brain was like shrinking. So I'm just having a quick look at my notes. Can I just show you what my notes look like? Like, they're just, you know. Yeah, actually, that's one thing I want to say, is that when we do get stuck in good and evil, we do tend to put evil in a box and put it away from us, because, oh, that's not us, like, you know, let's put it, and it becomes a bit of a fetish then, evil stuff, you know, and we're kind of drawn to it like moths. You know, it seems to illuminate really loud, like, oh, hello, come and look at me, like, because humans, I mean, actually, I've just been studying Jordan Peterson's psychology and bibliography, the Bible, and he was saying from a psychological or clinical psychological view that the smarter the child, the quicker they lie. Geez, I found that fascinating. It's part of our nature to lie, and people think that that's evil, you know. Looking. I think it's probably, oh yeah, and you know, from a witchcraft perspective, particularly with nature-based witchcraft, well, it is energy is nature, so we call it super put a hole in it, nature. It's not supernatural, it's super nature, do you know? So we're really just tapping into what's already been created. So it's just ability of believing. You can see, I mean, I see energy as color and stuff like that. So I've got a very tangible space to pull it. I mean, energy is actually invisible, isn't it? You can't see it. We just know it exists. So it's a little bit like faith, isn't it? You know, but it's a science-based faith. And, you know, and we could talk about philosophies as far as science goes, you know, like I look at science and I see that it is very consistent of what humans need, you know, like, and your belief system. I mean, why is it that the contraception pill was for women? It's because, well, that's your fault, women, because you get pregnant and the baby's your responsibility and it's part of your stuff. So we're going to create a drug for you rather than going, well, what about the bloke? Like, you know, so science is stuck within its own prejudices and belief systems as well. And also I want to talk about ethics in my job as well. I've talked to you a little bit about my Red Room ethics. It really does worry me about the way that, you know, there's good doctors, do you know, as far as bed manner goes. You know, some doctors have to, many doctors have to deliver bad news. Some of them are very good at delivering it and some of them are very bad at delivering it. And sometimes I think they might get so overwhelmed and they just get blunt. And sometimes I wonder if that's what happens potentially with some psychics or clairvoyants, that, you know, you're constantly telling, you can get blunt. But I just want you to know that as a client, come in with your own set of boundaries. If you're feeling that the person across from you is bullying you in any capacity or making you feel bad for your life choices, you need to probably exit yourself from that situation. No one has the right to treat you badly. You may come in, for example, and your whole life's a mess, and my life's been a mess. So if I'm coming from a place of empathy when I see that, and a place of, well, you know what, let's tap back into your good energies. Let's get you back out of that hole. If I sat there and went, oh, well, you're just, you know, you're getting judged. That's a terrible space. And that's when I get really passionate about stuff, because I want to protect people's energies and let people be, I don't know, I don't think we need to be cruel to be kind, you know. I think we can always have bed manner. But you know what? I had a friend once say to me, where do you get off on having that opinion, Jo? Like, and that's a true concept, do you know, like, how dare I judge those people for the way that they conduct themselves, right? It's the hypocrisy in all of us. We're all hypocrites, you know, much of the time, like, without even knowing it. We are such a complex, conscious mind. It's why we've evolved the last, 3 million years to what we are now. It's because of this conscious mind that we don't even understand ourselves. So, I'm more than aware of my own fallings. So I ask the questions, your body tells you how you feel about stuff, and I want you to know that. So even when you're doing casting and spells and stuff, listen to your body. Like, if your body's rejecting what you're doing, just don't do it. Don't do it. So I might wrap it up there because we're at 60 minutes. Lots of blessings. The next one will be energy. Thank you for staying tuned. You know that it gives me something to do in lockdown. I've tried to keep my mental brain busy's probably the best thing for me, because I do have a mind that does that all the time. There are many things I'm sure I've skipped over too quickly and not gone into enough. But hopefully I've given you some spaces to go and research for yourself if you are more inclined to move towards learning about spells and ethics and stuff like that. I think it's extremely important that ethics is the first place you start with. List down things that are important to you. If you are, if you're going against your own your own vibe, your own energy, your own gut, don't do it. Particularly with coven work, if you end up in a coven. I'm a solo practitioner, but I have done coven work with other solo practitioners. I stay away from anything that has a hierarchy. Not to say that some people, you know, if it's a democracy, you know, and you've selected people to be at the head for a certain reason and a certain time, that's totally different. But if there's a hierarchy where you've got your high priestess and, you know, they're sitting at the top, you've got to be very careful about who you've selected to be up there, because they're dictating. And you know, a lot of people, when they're sorting information or they're searching for something, don't really have a concept of themselves in that process. So if you've only just started to join witchcraft, it's extremely important you find the right people to be teaching you. And it may not be me, it may be someone else. But be very aware of the person's like, the first question you should ask a teacher is, what's your agenda? What's your intention as a teacher for me? Because, you know, I'm selecting you, and you should be able to move through teachers as you please. There is no hold. No one should hold you, because, you know, they're stopping some sort of frequency, and I only know a little bit of something. You know, there's a whole world of information out there that you can find. So I'll leave you on that. Lots of love. Hopefully this doesn't take so long to upload.